butters and cheeses. You know, so we're just going to have to go back to natural fruits and vegetables. You know, and make sure you rinse the stuff off you buy it at the grocery stores, because who knows what they've got it laced with, you know. Yeah, it's a war, and it's a battle zone, and people are going to have to stand up and start taking care of themselves if you want to stay healthy, if you want to stay alive. Most of the cancers today that are ravaging the people have been caused by the government. And they allow these things to happen by spraying the chemtrails in the air, by poisoning, contaminating the foods we drink and the things that we drink, the things that we eat, air, water, food. You know, the war is on. The war is on to take people out, to take out 5.5 billion people off this planet. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on break. I know Steve's got a 30-second. You got a 30-second coming up, Steve? Steve's going to go on break here.
We can skip it if you want.
No, go ahead and take it. And what we'll do is come back. I'm going to go into some of the stuff I have on the churches and Zionism today. Listener caller line is 260-356-2611. If you want to call in and be the first caller when we come back from break, and Steve's going to go on break. We'll be back in about 30 seconds, folks.
This is the Reality Radio Network on Telstar 5 Transponder 5 and on the internet at realityradionetwork.com.
Do you know where the 78 potentially active volcanoes in U.S. are located? And do you know the locations of the top 300 prime terrorist targets? You can find these answers and more in the new interactive CD book, Prudent Places USA. With the more than 50 interactive parameters, you can pinpoint natural and man-made disaster areas, brewing environmental catastrophes, the safest cities, the best places for solar and wind energy, and much, much more. Complete with 3 gigabytes of detailed information on each of 3,000-plus counties in the U.S., including 550 high-resolution full-color maps and full-color photographs, as well as detailed information and analysis to help you zero in on the best places to live, the ideal location for cabins and vacation homes, as well as safe and unsafe areas. Get Prudent Places USA for only $29 plus shipping by calling New Millennium at 888-803-4438. That's 888-803-4438 to order on the web or at berkeywater.com.
And now back to Sherry.
And welcome back to the show, folks. I made a post on my blogger this week. It's about the churches and Zionism. And I'll go over that because, you know, the churches want us to think that our job is to protect Israel at all costs, that Zionism is Christian patriotism and protecting the Lord's people. Most people today in the churches don't understand what Zionism is. They hear the term Zionism, and they think it's protecting the Lord's people. They think it's protecting Jerusalem and Israel. And what they don't understand is that the dominant people in Jerusalem today are not real Jews. They are the fake Edomite Jews, the fake Khazar Jews. Zionism is not a religion. Zionism is a political agenda, and most of those in Zionism are atheists. And they are the ones secretly working with the New World Order to destroy the Bible-believing Christians in Jerusalem and the surrounding areas, to make sure that they stay in control power so that they can put up this third temple that they want in Israel. And so, you know, once the churches can understand that Zionism is not, you know, a religious agenda, it's a political hatred agenda towards the religious believing Jews, then maybe they can understand, you know, the brainwashing they've been in. Because when the Lord talks about those who bless Israel will be blessed and those who curse Israel will be cursed, He's talking about His people, Israel. He's not talking about the land. He knew that the land, Israel, in the last days would become apostate and an abomination to Him. And if you look around the world today and you look at who His people are, and they're all over the world, and what He's basically saying is, and who is an Israelite, who is a Jew to Him? It's anybody who believes in Him and follows His commandments. And so that's what He's talking about, folks. He's talking about those who bless His people will be blessed, and those who curse His people will be cursed. He is not talking about the land of Israel itself, because the land of Israel itself, He will not regather His people to the land of Israel until He returns. And you can read about it in the book of Revelation when He regathers all of His people back to the land. And Jeremiah talked about it. some of the prophets of old have talked about the regathering of the Jews to Israel. That's after he returns. That's not now. We know that now that the Christians, Bible-believing Jews in Israel, will end up having to flee for their lives away from this Zionist-controlled government that will institute Solomon's temple there, start animal sacrifices, start that whole thing up again, and they're going to end up having to flee for their lives as it is. So the Lord is not leading people there now to go to Israel. The Bible-believing Jews reject this Zionism because they understand full well what it is. And what is a real Jew? A Jew is anyone, and this is from the Jewish rabbis themselves. You can go to JewsNotZionism.org. They have a great site over there. Also, JewsAgainstZionist.com, or it might be JewsAgainstZionism.com. It's one of the two. A Jew is one who's either born of a Jewish mother or adopts Judaism and the laws of Yahweh. How many people today realize that Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, not one of these matriarchs were born a Jewess, but were all converts to Judaism? Or about the two tribes, Ephraim and Manasseh, sons of Joseph, born of an Egyptian woman who converted to Judaism. And these were two great nations adopted as tribes of Israel. So we went from 12 tribes of Israel to 14 when he adopted Ephraim and Manasseh. So there are actually technically 14 tribes of Israel. Being Jewish isn't about race, and some people's hair is curling already because I'm using the term Jew, which is basically a relatively new term. This was never used in ancient times. They were Judeans, they were Hebrews, they were Israelites, never known as Jews until the KJV came out. And we just kind of slung everything into one sweeping generalization term to describe an entire race of people by calling them Jews. And so, even King David, the greatest king of Israel who ever lived, his own grandmother was not a Jew. She was a Gentile who adopted the Jewish religion. And that's what the apostles have dealt with in the New Testament of Christian converts who accepted the Lord as the Messiah, who wanted his salvation, his redemption. And what they did was they became Jews themselves. And it's not a race thing. It was an inward conversion thing where you became a part of the Lord's people, where you became a part of him by choosing him and deciding to follow his laws and teachings. And so we've seen a lot of whitewash from then, a lot of snowballing away from what it really meant back in the time of Jesus to what it means today. The New Testament didn't change or replace the laws of Yahweh. The churches that teach the Old Testament as the Old Covenant are replacing Yahweh's laws as outdated, despite the fact that Yahushua and his apostles still celebrated the feasts and observed the Jewish laws, and this was never replaced, never to be negated. The Lord said when he left, he never instituted anything new. He didn't change anything, but he warned us of false apostles coming in their own name, who the people would accept. He didn't tell us anybody new was coming after him. He warned us of anyone false coming after him. And so Paul came in his own name after the Lord ascended into heaven, changed all the teachings of the New Testament, would encourage people to stop following the laws, and when they got together to stone him and because of his blasphemies and heretical teachings, then he would turn around and try to prove what a big Jew he was because he followed the laws himself and the feasts. But at the same time, he always spoke with a double-forked tongue and would tell the people not to follow them. And that's why there were so many instances against Paul by the early cities, the early believers. And he makes it sound like, I'm taking so much heat from these people. They don't want to hear the truth. And it had anything to do with the truth. They were after him because he was lying. So that's why he took off to the Gentiles and tried to become a big apostle to the Gentiles. And we know Peter was the one appointed to be the apostle to the Gentiles. And so Paul wanted to take it onto himself because the Gentiles didn't know a thing about Jewish customs or laws. They didn't know he was lying to them. He was teaching them blasphemies and heresies. So he was safer with them than he was the Jewish crowd. Listener call-in line 260-356-2611. That's kind of quiet tonight. I think everybody's just on a vacation or taking time off or something. You know,